Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of a Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host Craig Fowler and back once again with a weekend review looking at the Scottish Premiership action, but also the two semi-finals in the Premier Sports Cup. To help me talk through those 6 matches on this occasion, it is Duncan McKay. Duncan, welcome back to the main show. It's been a while since you've been on a Premiership review.
I think it has been. Yeah, it has been. But I've got nothing to say on that. It has been a while. There we go. Well, it is football. Football, eh? It happens.
The last time you were shows how rusty you are. You don't even know how to say anything apart from it's been a while. So I think it was the last day was you and was it Craig Anderson in person in my flat?
I think it might be. Yeah.
That was a while ago. Not maybe 11 months ago, something like that, along those lines.
Yeah, and what an august weekend of action that you've got me back to talk on. Whoa, some real good stuff here, isn't there?
So there is, to be fair, more. I mean, there seems to be late drama every week. I'm going to talk about this more review for the Terrace this week, but I quite like this season. There seems to be late drama every single weekend.
Oh, the drama does not constitute quality. In terms of you can find drama in lots of places. Whether you want,
it's a Scottish top flight. We're never actually good to have quality.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point. Yeah,
this needs to be entertaining, and this season I think has been actually reasonably entertaining. But there were 2 matches that weren't so entertaining. Well, there was certainly 3, and probably I'd say 4 this weekend that weren't so entertaining. But 2 of them took place in the Premier Sports Cup. I mean, you can say that one of them was entertaining in the sense that it was competitive, but it wasn't a great game. And we will not begin with that one, though. We'll begin with the match that took place on Saturday evening, and that was Celtic defeating Aberdeen in the first semi-final. Aberdeen recently going to Celtic Park and drawing 2 each with the reigning champions, and so there was a big build-up for this one. They're neck and neck in the league table. Aberdeen in midweek beating Rangers, the holders of the Premier Sports Cup, doing so in the Scottish Premiership. Huge build-up for this one. Big anticipation. Celtic 6, Aberdeen 0.
Yeah, a big from Aberdeen. Well, that's not fair because actually, this is the thing is Aberdeen weren't terrible. I think in my view, I just thought Celtic potentially given a scare by the game a couple of weeks ago at Celtic Park went, there's no chance we're letting that look like an anomaly, or there's every chance we want to make that look like an anomaly, and it just unbelievable, just the pace of Celtic. They just look like they're playing a different game. It genuinely, we talk about this a few times, but it did genuinely look like different levels on FIFA, or I know it's not called FIFA now, but it was that stuff. And even the goals, some of the goals were just especially Maida's the 6th one. It was just that's exactly how that happens in FIFA as well. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
That was a lovely goal. That one, the touch from Bernardo to put it out wide, and then and you're right. They were ruthless. They were ruthless in this one in a way that they weren't really in the match at Celtic Park. And I mean, this is what the Aberdeen fans jumped on it in the wrong way possible. This is kind of what myself and you were talking about. There is going to I actually said Aberdeen fans on Twitter were like, they said we were lucky. They said we were lucky to get a draw at Celtic. I was like, I didn't say you were lucky. I didn't say you were lucky to be in this position. All I said is that they've not really experienced any bad luck, which, I mean, now you could maybe argue that is a form of being lucky in itself if you don't do that. But what happens when Aberdeen experience bad luck? And in this one, the bad luck was that Celtic barely missed any chances, other than Maida had one early on that maybe could have done better, but he would have been flagged offside anyway. Can't think of too many others that Celtic passed up the opportunity to score. When they got into positions, they put the ball into the back of the net, and that's just something that's always possible to happen with a team of that quality. And the game was over before half-time due to that, because Celtic's performance, I didn't think was as good as their performance in the first half when they played Aberdeen at Celtic Park a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, we always say that about, what it was against playing the Old Firm, but now it's just mainly Celtic, I think, based on the season, is that even to be in with a chance, things have to go your way. If call it luck, call it, very precise strategy or whatever, but the things will be sometimes on a knife edge, and sometimes you need to carry that with you to being with a fighting chance of even being close, and just all like I think if you're Celtic basically played like they were just speeding through a town at night and all the lights were on green. That was it. Like it was just everything just worked, and you just saw that by how ruthless. Yeah, ruthless is exactly the right word that you used, and just it was just so. It was the precision of the breaking, the accuracy of the passing. Yeah, I mean, Aberdeen were especially for the opener. You could say they were playing a very, very high line. The second one is a bit of a mess, but it's also understandable because you've just conceded. It's not a high line. Sorry, what am I talking about? The first goal. I was a set piece. I was like, no, CCV gets so high. That's what I meant. It was the second goal with the high line, and also Jack McKenzie has just got to do so much better. He's got to be stronger in that first contact, and it was and essentially Celtic were ruthless in pouncing on mistakes as well, and that's that. And that's it. I would also say, and this is something that we sometimes don't give credit for. I think remember we've played a number of League Cup semi-finals at this time of the season and other parts of the season where the pitch has been a total mess. The pitch looked immaculate for both games actually, and so that definitely helped Celtic in how they were wanting to play, like a slick surface, and they just incredible. Yeah, like it feels. Yeah, the finishing was just remarkable.
Yeah, there was, and it was the first. While the game was still in the balance, felt like the first 28 minutes before Carter Vickers scored, it was two teams where I think both were playing quite well defensively. I think the most impressive aspect of the first half hour was, like, for Celtic, I remember thinking, like, Kuhn's having a decent game so far. And Engels was probably the kind of player with the kind of most quality about him in an attacking sense. But the main thing that was impressive about them two and other members of the Celtic team was the work they were doing back defensively. Kuhn kept coming back to basically act like almost like a midfield spoiler and kind of disrupt Aberdeen's attempts to play. But at the same time, Aberdeen were doing the same to Celtic. They were defending very well. They were defending better in that period than they did over the same time when they played at Celtic Park. You could see that there was a lot of, I think, mutual respect in that first half an hour. But I did think before the game, I just had this thought to myself. I was like, I wonder if like Celtic get ahead, and especially if they get by 2 goals ahead, whether Brendan Rodgers has kind of said to them that this is a scenario that they've almost planned for. When we do this, make sure this time you step on their neck. Don't let them get back up. And that's just what happened. And I did think that Aberdeen were a bit naive. I don't know whether it was a game. I don't know whether it was instructions from Jimmy Thielen. I would actually assume more it was just a natural reaction from the players when they went a goal down to push forward that little bit more and to just kind of commit more bodies and to be like, okay, let's get back into the match, because for good reasons, confidence will be flooded throughout them, and they would have went into that game believing that they could beat Celtic and they could get to a final. So when usually in games when you're playing against the side that you fancy yourselves a beating, if you go goal down, then you just naturally start to edge forward. But they edged more. It was a bit naive. They edged more than they needed to, and they left big gaps that then meant Celtic were able to punish them with those 2 counter-attacks before the end of the half. And then that was it. Once it went 3-0, you knew coming back for 2-0 is
to have done it, to do it twice in quick
succession
would be unlikely.
But at the same time, if you're 2-0 down and Aberdeen start the second half well and get a goal, then it's like, on the one hand, when it's 2-0, I was thinking, they're not going to do it again. But then I was thinking, but at the same time, if as soon as a team makes it 2-1, if they've done it recently, then that is not only in their heads that, yes, we've done this recently, we can now go and we can definitely get a second goal. But the opposition, Celtic, would also then be thinking, like, oh shit, is this seriously going to happen again? And the entire mentality of the match changes. So that third goal that Maida was able to get just before, the last one before the break on 40 minutes, that was the killer. And second half was just Celtic kind of flexing their muscles at that point. And it's hard to say too much more else about it. It's a bit of a shame that it ended turning into such a kind of damp squib of a semi-final in the end, but I don't really know how much more we can talk about this game. It was Celtic being ruthless and Aberdeen learning a painful lesson that now we'll see what their kind of metal is made of. They've now had the game where things haven't gone in their favour. Celtic barely missed a chance. They rattled 6 at the back of the net. Do you dust yourself off and move on, or does that hang over you now? Does that just dent the confidence a little bit? You would like to think not, especially with a week to prepare for the next match, and that next match being Dundee at home, which Dundee, we'll get to later on, are capable of getting something at Pittodrie, but you would obviously fancy Aberdeen for that one.
Yeah. I think, just before we move on, I think 3 slightly small observations from them from the game was, one was Jamie McGrath's free kick, which in the first half, which I think when you do something wrong one way, so you just try too hard much the other way, and so like his penalty last week against Rangers was very soft. So I'm going to take this free kick in a relatively dangerous area, and I'm just going to hit this as hard as I can, and I think that's ended up somewhere in Rutherglen at the moment. I suppose it's the second goal. All of that, we were saying, was incredibly messy, but Kyogo's like placement of the ball, of hitting it as hard as he can, but up the way, to ensure that no player can get in the way of it, just incredible. To have that composure in such a fast moving environment.
You could say it was almost a spectacular miss, though.
Yeah, but I don't think it. Well, yeah, but
I think he's needed to lift it. He's needed to lift it, but I don't think he needed to really lift it that high. He was very close to it.
Again, that's the thing, is that he gets credit for how the rest of the performance went. That you can say, oh, he meant that, as opposed to if that had been maybe another striker playing for another team in Glasgow that we're talking about very soon, you might not give him that credit. And then Brendan Rodgers falling over, just that is funny. It's funny. People falling over is funny. People take themselves very seriously falling over. Very, very funny.
Right, let's move on to the game which took place on Sunday. That was the other semi-final, and that was Motherwell defeating. It looked like it was going to be for a while, but no, it was Rangers defeating Motherwell by 2-1. Andy Halliday opening the scoring, and not celebrating out of respect to the Rangers fans. Not a huge fan of that when it's a semi-final at a national stadium. And then Cyril Dessers shortly after half-time, getting Rangers back at the match. And then Nedim Bajrami with the winner with 9 minutes to go. And considering how the first half went of this game, I think you've got to be a little bit, if you're a fan of if you're not a Rangers fan, because obviously the entire country apart from Rangers fans would have wanted Motherwell to win this to get to the final. And even some Rangers fans, because Ewan Taylor was not entirely enthused about his side winning this match and Celtic setting up a final against Celtic where he thinks they're going to get absolutely annihilated. And I'm sure there are other Rangers fans thinking the same. But you kind of thought, first half, Rangers were that bad. Motherwell will get the goal. Dessers misses that huge chance which he should score, but otherwise, Rangers aren't really creating an awful lot. Their passing is all over the place. Their touches are all over the place. They look like a team that's an absolute shambles. But then, second 45, they just dominated, and Motherwell never really looked like doing anything in that period that was going to get them back in front.
Yeah. No, I did have literally had my notes open and read it and be like, well, Motherwell, like in the second half, Motherwell, that back five is holding their line really, really well. And literally 20 seconds later, Rangers had the ball in the back of the net. I was like, But yeah, it was an interesting game in the sense that I don't know how good Motherwell were for their lead, if that makes sense. I think the Rangers were that abject in the first half that Motherwell didn't do a great deal because both early on, like there was just so little composure from both sides. Like the turnover between the teams, turnover the ball was ludicrous, really, for what is meant to be, an elite competition. But if that's what would worry the most if I was a Rangers fan, is that on the first half basis, Motherwell weren't that great, but we still went in. But actually, the fact that there wasn't much between the teams would would annoy me more because it was, especially the first half and for a lot of this, a bit more less of the second half, it was kind of just pea-hearted from Rangers as well. Like there was just bad, like picking up silly bookings that were kind of mindless and petulant. Jefty was, I mean, geez, like if we top it after the goal, like that absolutely perfect freeze frame that Robert put up online, in terms of, because he looks like he's the one wheeling away celebrating. Like, how are you there? Like, but I don't. Yeah, it was just a very bizarre first half. Like you don't want to say it because ultimately they dug him out, but it did very much look like the performance of a team that was not playing for their manager.
Yeah, it did. In the first half, it certainly did, and then I don't know whether they decided to play for him, or just the second half they kind of woke up and thought, well, losing a semi-final at Motherwell is quite embarrassing. Maybe we should just win this. But they were certainly a lot better. And I mean, you mentioned one fullback. We should probably mention the other one, James Tavernier. I mean, the man is trying his best to ruin his legacy, really, at Rangers. And you kind of wonder what his legacy would be. It's something that's talked about an awful lot because he's been Rangers captain for a sustained period now, through what has been, I mean, compared to what it was before he got the captaincy, still better because they have won trophies and they won a league title. But obviously over the course of Rangers' history, this is still a really kind of poor period, and he's been there for a big chunk of it. But we've often said on this show, myself and Tony in particular, that he gets far too much criticism. Like when things go bad, people point the finger at him because he's the captain and says he's not got the kind of intangibles, and John Gregg would have never have stood for this kind of thing, forgetting that John Gregg was captain for Rangers, I'm pretty sure, through most of Celtic's 9 in a row. So, but recently though, it's starting to be like, oh no, you're not kind of, he's not appearing like a captain should, because he's starting to lose his powers because he is getting old, and that happens to everybody, and that's not necessarily his fault. But I think you can also just tell as well that
he's not feeling it.
He's not feeling it. He's not got, whether it's a confidence thing, whether he's just not happy fitting in the Kilmarnock system, whatever it is. Tavernier, even like when he was like a poor defensive player, he was somebody that I was never surprised that he got the captaincy at Rangers, because he was somebody that was quite talismanic in the way that he played, like driving forward constantly, like trying to make things happen, being brave. Be brave on the football. And these days he's just like, I mean, that performance was shocking. Like he was just like passing the ball out the park and doing nothing with it. And he was so poor. And then he does actually get an opportunity. He does get himself into the penalty area in the second half, and he misses a sitter. And so it's, even when he is getting forward and being brave and trying to do something, it's just not coming off for him. So all in all, an absolute stinking performance for him. And it felt like if he'd like left in the summer, ultimately, especially in a couple of years' time, or maybe longer, probably longer, when things are a bit rosier again for Rangers fans would look back and like say like a hero. Like, would they go as far as saying club legend? Not entirely sure, but they might, because he did captain
within the context, I suppose, of the last.
What they've had to deal with. He was certainly one that, it's been a bad period for Rangers in their history, but he's definitely been one of their better players, and certainly the best in terms of kind of longevity. He's been there well in recent years. But the more he's playing this season, the more it's like they're just sick of the sight of him, and for obvious reasons.
And for me, I would be curious to understand, because you'd have thought the way that Clement is wanting to play with the wingers, and Czerny especially, of him playing out on the right but coming inside, that surely is the perfect system for Tavernier to be bombing down and offering that support. But again, is it that he's not got the pace and he can't do it, or I don't know if it is he's necessarily down in tools, but it's an odd phenomenon that we've got at the moment, and it's the same with the persistence, I suppose, with the system that is not getting the best out of your main striker as well. You're going in terms of Dessers, because again, Lawrence, Dessers and Tavernier are definitely the kind of the boo boys at the moment. But I don't watch watch as much as Rangers as everyone else. But to me, he is clearly a 6-yard box striker.
Yeah.
And so why has he been asked to do things that he's patently not suited for? He does, and obviously there's parts of it you can say he doesn't do enough, I don't think, in terms of running, in terms of making runs. But again, I would say that that's not his game. So you're asking him to do something that he's not particularly great at. But if you're asking him to hold up play or drop deep or anything like that, that's not his game. So if you're going to persist with him, why would you not try and introduce tactics which gets players to the byline, cut back and putting away? And okay, we know that he's not necessarily guaranteed to put all of them away, but he's got a fair chance. And you can see he is a good finisher some of the time. And I suppose that led on to that there was a lot of chat from Rangers fans I saw online, post match and stuff, saying that aforementioned three that underperformed, and Sterling, Danilo, and Diamonde finishing, saying, "Oh, that finishing 11 is what should start," and things like that. I'm kind of weary of saying, well, that is definitely a step change, because also Motherwell were knackered. I think it was easier to look more energetic and more athletic than Motherwell, because they were out on their feet from about the 60th minute.
Aye, the problems with Motherwell squad this season, and that's their big injury list that they've got at the moment, that really kind of hamstrung them in that second period. So it was maybe a bit harsh earlier. I was like, Motherwell didn't really look like getting back into the game. It's one of those ones where, like, he makes the changes, and it's when he's making the changes, like Zach Robinson coming on, and I was watching, I was like, really? And then Yar Tavares coming on as well. And again, I'm like, really? Because it's the whole thing where, I mean, Tony Watt, though, Tony Watt's sitting on the bench. I don't know if he's just not fancied at all, or what was happening there. And even like a B not coming off the bench, because he has at least been, I don't think he's a good footballer, but he's proven that he's good for a goal, especially when he comes on as a sub. So I'm not entirely sure there, but still, it's a squad which is missing a lot of key players. They're missing a lot of like attacking midfielders. They're missing Peyton Slattery. I mean, I don't know how much Callahan would have made a difference with that signing in the summer. I thought that was a bit weird. But they're also missing Sam Nicholson as well, who did look good towards the end of last season, but could help bridge that. They're missing defenders like Paul McGinn, who can take the ball out. Stephen O'Donnell, he can also play at kind of right side of centre half. He can take the ball out. And so it kind of meant that not only were they bringing on players that aren't very good to try and get back into the match, or to try and push themselves back ahead at one each. It also meant that they were going long a lot of the time. But
without the ability to hold it up.
Yeah, exactly. Without Stamatopoulos, Stamatopoulos is I think all right enough at that, but he's not a very big guy, so he's always going to struggle to really kind of hold it up. He can be a bit of a nuisance, and he can do the occasional kind of flick on and kind of round the corner pass, and he can work and he can make things difficult. But it's not like if you're having to go long that often, then you need somebody that's good at keeping it up there. And they just don't really have that. And they're just, there's a lot of players out, but I mean, as I said in the commentary, they always kind of say competitive in these matches. I always look at Motherwell's team and I'm like, other than Len Miller, this looks rubbish to me. but they're never really, they never seem to get hammered, and they're performing quite well in the league, and they got to the semi-final. So they ran out, like you say, they ran out of, to me, they could have ran out of. They ran out of everything. They ran out of everything.
I think that was the issue, is that once it went to 1-0, they could get Lennon Miller on the ball, but the problem is he's then got to pass it to someone that is infinitely inferior to it. Like even just having a second person that had that level of composure or ability to retain the ball would have made the game slightly. I'm not, because it was competitive, but that you'd have thought going into the last 10 minutes, you've got a fighter's chance here.
It's a competitive game because Rangers won the match 2-1, but for most of the second half, you were thinking there's only going to be one winner here. This is Motherwell are not going to sneak this. Yeah,
they would have really needed to go on quite late in the game, and Rangers, the fans turned on each other, and the players have been like, this is not happening. But it just didn't happen long enough. It was too early in the second half for them, sadly.
Right, let's go to the 4 Scottish Premiership games that took place over the weekend, and we shall begin on Sunday with a game at Dens Park. Dundee 3, Kilmarnock 2. Dundee coming back from 2 goals down. Bruce Anderson and Matty Kennedy scoring in the first half for Killie. But even though Kennedy scored in the 40th minute, they couldn't keep that advantage till half-time, with Seb Palmer-Houlden equalising, getting one back a minute later. Then Jordan McGee equalised 11 minutes in the second half. And in a reversal of the last time the teams met at Dens just a few weeks ago, it's Dundee this time who won it in injury time, with Zaid Larkesh scoring in the 94th minute. Duncan, I watched this one. Who would you like to know a bit more about first of all, Killie or Dundee?
Who do I want more? That's a good. Probably Killie. But my official sort of dubbing of this match is possibly the marking from crosses is overrated derby. Because, let's not bother, will we? Yeah,
I mean, that's the kind of... So obviously there's the first 2 goals. The first one is undoubtedly, it's undoubtedly a mistake from McCracken. I don't think that needs said. Anybody that saw it would know that. He goes to catch a simple ball in his own 6-yard area and somehow throws it off his own shoulder, and then it bounces down and Bruce Anderson scores one of the easiest goals he's going to score in his career. The second one, it is poor. They allow Kennedy, not the biggest of guys, not known for scoring many headers, to attack the ball. Again, at the time I saw a clip of the goal with like McCracken being blamed again, and I thought, I'm not entirely convinced about that. It's a header from close range, there's a decent bit of power in it. He does get a hand to it, but I think often goalies are blamed whenever they get a hand to something. And it's like, just because you get a hand to it doesn't mean you should save it all the time. But having looked at it back, I think he still can do better. I think he gets enough contact on it that it would have been a very good save to pull off. And I'm a wee bit suspect about how much he kind of moves to his right as he's going across his goals, also that he kind of loses that split second shift in his body weight, try to spring back the other way.
I think that's been hypercritical. I don't think he's he wouldn't be my top guy for
that's fine. That's fine. I'd be happy to agree with you, because I couldn't really fully make up my mind on that one. The Palmer-Houlden goal, that's Robbie Dees, I think, goes mental at Lewis Mayo after it goes in, because Dees leaves it and doesn't bother trying to attack it because Mayo's kind of going backwards and jumps up, and I think he thinks Mayo's going to get there and he doesn't, and that allows Palmer-Houlden to score. But Palmer-Houlden is Dees' man. Don't care about whether your teammate's going to get it or not. Just go attack it yourself in case it happens. It's what you say about strikers, gambling. So that's what Palmer-Houlden does. He gambles that Mayo's not going to get there. But Dees should be doing the same. That's poor defender. It's a combination of the pair of them, but it's Dees' fault as well as Mayo's. And that's... So, you asked about Killie. So Killie would be a bit interested in this one. They played with a 3-5-2. That's fairly standard for Kilmarnock. But Matty Kennedy played in the centre of the park. He played on the left of the midfield 3 with Ndaba at wing-back. Now, I haven't seen any of the Hearts game in midweek, but the game prior away to County last weekend, McInnes quite often in that match, to the point where, and this happened again in this game, in the second half, in the first half, I think it was around about half an hour in, he kind of made an alteration where he told Corey Ndaba to kind of attack inside an awful lot and to move inside whenever he moved forward. And then kind of Kennedy would cover the space on the left. And then he kept it up to the point where Ndaba in the second half just played in midfield for a period. He'd done the exact same in this one, but the first half was to allow that to, I think, to be a bit more fluid between them, where there was the option for Ndaba to come in and Kennedy to go out wide. But mostly it was Ndaba staying wide and Kennedy just picking up the ball in that area. And Kennedy, I mean, he must have touched the ball more than just about any other Killie player in this game, because it felt like he was on the ball constantly and was, as we know, Matty Kennedy's a good player. He was a threat. If he had a better game in terms of his final ball, then that seems weird because he did score. But if he did have a final game in terms of his final ball, then I think Killie would have added another goal or two, because there was just so many times where he just had opportunities to try and find a teammate in the penalty area and wasn't able to do it. But then second half, they did change it up. Kennedy went to wing back. Wyscout had it as a 4-4-2. I don't think it actually was. I think Kennedy went to wing back and Ndaba just went into the middle of the park. Now, it sounds weird, but they'd done this after Dundee had equalised. And the period between Killie scoring and Dundee equalising was the best I felt that Dundee looked in the match. And I think that was because they were struggling a little bit in the middle of the park, going up against the Killie 3 with only Lyle Cameron and Mo Silla. They made the change at half time. They brought in Mulligan, who was a bit better than Cameron, because he's just a bit of a kind of bigger guy, a bit like, yeah, he's just a bigger body in there and could do a bit more of the defensive work better. But he was also getting forward to help out and had a decent game after he came on. But they were also, Dundee just started going a wee bit more direct to their front three of Palmer Holden, Simon Murray and Adewumi, who played a big part in that goal. And that's what you can see with the first goal. Adewumi kind of comes out to the left. Larkesh makes a run inside, which takes away kind of two Killie players and grants them the space to cross it in. But the movement between them, whenever they could get to them, was quite good. The problem was trying to play it through the midfield due to the Killie setup, especially with Brad Lyons having a very impressive game in the middle of the park. But once we kind of changed it, put Ndaba to defensive midfield, Killie were again kind of controlling a lot of the territory. But at the same time, Dundee looked more threatening and had the better opportunities in the second half.
Yeah, I found what I found interesting about McInnes's post-match interview was he talked about basically Dundee wanting it more than Kilmarnock, and and you're talking about people not following runners and things like that. Is that a worry if you're Kilmarnock, or is it just a case of actually this was just Dundee really did want it more sort of thing, and given how the last game turned out, there was probably more at stake for Dundee in this one? Or
I don't know. There wasn't anything I saw from watching the match that I thought, Dundee just wanted this one more. I just think it was a case of, like, Armstrong, I think, had a decent enough first half, but ended up being taken off. I think it was quite soon in the second period. Let me just double check that to make sure I'm not talking. Yeah, he was taken off once it went to 2 each. And again, he was kind of a player that could have dropped out of it when Dundee started to, that period between Killie's second and Dundee equalised, and that was a period when Ken Armstrong dropped out of it. And like I say, Kennedy had so much of the ball in the final third, but wasn't able to pick out crosses for Kyle Vassell to attack, or Bruce Anderson to attack when he was still in the park, and then Innes Cameron came on. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure it's wanting more. I know if you're defending poorly, then there's a reason to be made, but I just thought it was kind of Killie not taking advantage of the opportunities they had in the final third, and Dundee doing that better. Yeah,
I mean, it's a huge win for Dundee, and this slightly weird thing that's happening is that these guys play each other again on the 30th of November. So all three of their games will have been played, pre-split. But this I suppose this puts Dundee right back in the mix. Whereas they lost, where they're at one stage, that had put them, potentially second bottom, and then you're going away to Aberdeen, and then you're playing Rangers. And let's be honest, it's Dundee versus Rangers. So we even we can fancy Rangers going into that one. But the first comeback win of the season, and that's remarkably. Gary was telling me this is the first time that a Dundee team has ever beaten a Derek McInnes side in the league, which Dundee I confound that. Just what a remarkable club. That's all I think about when I hear stuff like that. Is that there's such low expectations they have as a club that it's taken that long. But one of the things that I think pointed out and saw a bit of commentary on is Ethan Ingram is not looking great for them at the moment.
No, they brought John McGee on. McGee's been missing for most of this season.
Yeah, I think hugely important, because that was he was at fault for a goal yesterday. Similarly lost his man in the first game at Dens, and was at fault for Dundee second on the opening game of the season, and then also gave away a daft pen in Dingwall. So like his charge sheet is sort of ratcheting up, but at the same time, I think as you said, like McGee coming back is huge for them. Just the flexibility he offers, but also like just now experience, and he seems to just his start name on team sheet seems to result in good results as well. And it's not the case that it's guaranteed, but it's something.
And he obviously scored the equaliser with a header, good header as well, because he had to put it into a position where like it wasn't. He couldn't really generate as much power, so he couldn't just kind of put it anywhere. He had to kind of get it away from Robbie McCrory, and he'd done it very well. But he also helped win that corner because it's him that makes the run to the back post. And I think it's Mo Silla putting a cross in for him. And then Kennedy had to just clear it behind and then the score for that corner. So an immediate impact for him. Him and, like I say, Mulligan as well were two of the half-time subs, and they did make a difference to Dundee's performance. But let's move on. And let's move on to the game which took place on Saturday at Perth. And that was St Johnstone 1, Hearts 2. Huge victory for Hearts. Nicky Clark scoring at both ends. He opened the scoring for the opponents with a just kind of flicked header as he was trying to clear a Blair Spittle corner, which took it past Ross Sinclair in goal. But he got the opportunity to make amends for that from the penalty spot, tucking it away after Cammy Devlin was adjudged to have hauled down Kyle Cameron. I think we'll get to that soon enough. And then also talk about some other things that happened in the game between Hibs and Dundee United, which is not a great week for VAR in the top flight. But Hearts ended up winning this match anyway. Kenneth Vargas getting the winning goal. And again, Duncan, this is a game that I watched, which I don't think you did. So again, where would you like me to begin in this one?
So I suppose Hearts made 3 changes after the late collapse against Kilmarnock. Like, was that the key to this win, or was it more just a thousand monkeys and 1,000 typewriters sort of stuff?
There was a bit of that. I think Hearts were a wee bit fortunate to get the win. I think overall a draw probably would have been the most fairest result in this one. The Hearts were a bit different than they played against Killie, because Killie was so much possession and not doing anything with it, which has been the problem with this Hearts team. Like, even when they're winning games, they're often a bit boring to watch and not looking at utterly convincing. Like, so much of last season was Hearts doing that, and that problem goes back to the Robbie Nielsen days of possession for possession's sake and not doing enough with it. This one, they didn't have much possession at all, only 38%. So St Johnstone kept a lot of the ball, but that's new St Johnstone. And if I'm a St Johnstone fan, I'm certainly happier about that in general, because they're a much better team to watch now. And I thought this game in general was a pretty decent game to watch. I know that I've seen Joel and Craig Kearn say that they thought it was crap, but I think if you're watching it from a Hearts perspective, it would be crap. I think if you're watching it more from a neutral perspective, if I was trying, because I knew we were doing the podcast, I was trying to concentrate on St Johnstone as well as Hearts, because we haven't be talking about them. And they are much more fun to watch now. And this was, the first half, I think in particular, was a bit of a better contest, because Hearts looked quite threatening when they got the ball forward, and St Johnstone were like kind of had a lot of the territory and were threatening themselves. So it had two teams that any time the ball went into the final third, you thought there could be a goal coming here. Hearts obviously go ahead. St Johnstone,
keeper's got to be given a shout on that. Like,
yeah, quite possibly, but. Maybe he just doesn't think. Yeah, you're probably right. The keeper's got to be given the shout there. That's something I hadn't actually considered, because I did see fans blaming Sinclair. But yeah, you should maybe be shouting to Clark to let that go.
Just because it's not really, Clark's not contesting it with anyone. If you know what I mean, like, no. That's so. I think, but I don't. Yeah, maybe the wind was making it challenging, but it didn't really seem like that was having too much of a factor.
The big advantage that St Johnstone had was Adama Sidibe against Kyle Rolls. But you can kind of see that Sidibe right now is lacking in so much confidence. And it's a shame for him that goal against Mirren in midweek didn't count, because that would have been a huge help to him. Because there was that moment in particular where Rolls kind of goes for the ball and doesn't quite get it, and Sidibe manages to get away from him. And then what he needs to do is advance on goal. If he advances on goal, he can have a shot himself. from much closer in, or he could square it across for a teammate to potentially tap into the back of the net. Instead, he goes to shoot really quickly, and there's not even like an element of surprise for it, because he does that kind of shimmy and kind of run up that forwards do when they're about to hit it. So it's not like he disguised it well so that Gordon would be like, even if the shot was on target, it wasn't. But even if the shot was on target, I don't think like Gordon would have been like, oh, he's shooting, I'm not ready for this. It was just a very strange choice. But overall, he really won that battle with Rolls. But who didn't win the battle was Kimpioka, who's obviously been the better of the two this season. He was going up against Frankie Kent. And the two of them pretty much done that all game. There wasn't really a lot of swapping. And I think had they had swapped them and had basically been like, oh, Sidibe, you're not in form. This Hearts defender's having a good game. You just hide, like, not necessarily hide, but you just go at him. You try to make his life as difficult as possible, but he's likely to win that battle. Kimpioka, you come over here and you go against this Australian guy who's having a nightmare. And St Johnstone might have got a bit more joy out of that, I think.
Yeah. I think that's what was quite interesting about St Johnstone at the moment, is the fans, despite the fact that the form hasn't improved dramatically, but at least I think they can feel like there's something there, yes, as opposed to like just the death ball that was being played by Levine. So at least there's some element of hope, even if the fact that they're going out and they are losing games, but they're maybe doing it with a fighting chance of winning, rather as opposed to just being like, we're just holding out and hoping that we don't get absolutely battered here. But and you saw elements of that, like, I'm not sure if it's a positive for St Johnstone or more of a concern for Hearts, in terms of how St Johnstone were playing through Hearts a number of times. Like they were good on the ball until it mattered, I suppose. So,
something really interesting about this was that, like, I thought St Johnstone shaded the first half, and then the second half, before the penalty, and the penalty doesn't come until the 68th minute. That is after a lengthy VAR check, but there's still like almost 20 minutes of action there where it was all St Johnstone. Like, Hearts could not get out at all, couldn't do anything like further forward, could barely make the ball stick, and it was just kind of wave after wave. And now the goal, to me, I've looked at it, I wasn't sure at the time, and I'm still not really sure. If you ask me on the balance of probability, then I think it is probably a penalty. I know a lot of Hearts fans probably won't like that, but I do think that, there's a bit of to and fro in. But I think Devlin makes the fatal mistake that when he goes to ground, and I'm not sure that Cameron quite does enough for that to be called a foul for Devlin to go to ground. I mean, Devlin does go to ground, he holds Cameron down. And also the replay for the side almost makes it look like Devlin initiates the contact and then it kind of goes back and forth. However, having the referee not given it, so this is like almost like civil court and criminal court. If you're talking civil court, balance of probabilities, I think it might be a penalty. If you're talking criminal court, where for VAR to overturn the decision, it has to be clear and obvious, it's simply not clear and obvious. So why are they getting involved, and why is the referee then going at that and saying, I definitely made an error there? It's something that I think this year with VAR we've seen less of, and that's been a good thing, but it's been a troubling weekend for it, because there's another one we're going to get on very soon where VAR got involved and they didn't have to, and that's not what we want.
It felt like a regression weekend. Obviously, our opposition to this junk piece of technology has been well stated, but it had become less malignant, I suppose, in a lot of time this season. This was back to last season, where it's getting involved in stuff that you don't see, you can't see. It was obvious. If like you're just like, sorry. At what point was you should be getting involved in something that is a glaring piece of misjustice or injustice? Sorry, misjustice, no injustice. Yeah. But especially since, like I say, like one of the angles, like the angle for the side, I think it does make it look like Devlin fouls him more. The angle for behind though makes it look like Cameron pushes him down and then Devlin pulls him. So I mean, why are you believing one camera angle over the other? Yeah. Well, there's another penalty in the final game that we're talking about that I think gets to the crux of this, of some of this matter now, is that actually there's, we'll save it for then. I'll save it for them, but it's just, it's fucked, and I'm not enjoying it, basically.
There's three final things to say in this game. One, Benny Beningame was
good,
excellent. He was the best. He was possibly the best player on the pitch. Certainly the best Hearts player, I would say. Him and Frankie Kent, I thought, were both very good. And Beningame is slalom and run for the goal as usual. When he said himself when he was interviewed by Rob after the game, like he kind of did get a bit of a nosebleed when he got to the penalty area, and like you can see on the telly that Vargas was always there. And you're like, give him it. Eventually he does, and Vargas slots it away. Before I move on, I will say that Beningame this season, I had my concerns about him last campaign when he came back. I didn't think he was as good, even after he did get up to speed and was playing well. I don't think he quite had the performance of his debut season, but I think he's back to that now. The trick is just keeping him fit for an extended run, because he is just, ever since he's come back from injury, he just seems to play a couple of games and then picks up a knock and then is out for a couple of weeks, or a knock or a pull or whatever, and then it's kind of a lot of stop-start for him. So we just need to try and keep him fit, keep him on the park, because he's certainly Hearts' best centre midfielder. And Kenny Vargas off the bench, not had a great season, Vargas. I thought he was good off the bench in this one. His pace really helped Hearts see the game out. He obviously scores the goal. He gets another opportunity. He means that St Johnstone can't push that high up late in the game. This is a Vargas that Hearts saw quite a bit more last season of, and obviously why they spent the money to bring him back on a permanent deal. And the third thing is just that St Johnstone never attempted another shot after they equalised. That's 22 minutes plus stoppage time, which I think there was 7 minutes. That's half an hour without a shot in a game that they were playing pretty well in up till that moment. So that's a bit of a concern and a disappointment. I did see a St Johnstone fan saying that when Uche comes back and is fit, that will give them an option that they don't have, which is what they were kind of reduced to late on, is just chucking the ball in the penalty area. And even Kai Roll started to play well towards the end in terms of rebelling those crosses. And obviously that's kind of Kent's bread and butter. So
yeah,
Hearts weren't convincing for a lot of us, there was some positives to take, especially how they saw out the final 20 minutes of the match by limiting St Johnstone and being a lot more threatening themselves. Right, let's move to the match at Easter Road, which took place on Sunday. Hibs 1, Dundee United 1. Hibs opened the scoring through Lewis Miller in the first half, and it looked like they were going to get the 3 points, which was going to take them back above Hearts in the league table. But instead, it's Hibs who finished this round of fixtures on the bottom of the pile, because a contentious late penalty for Dundee United, then converted by Sam Dalby, meant a share of the spoils. Mikola Kukarevich was the one adjudged to have fouled, and I think it was Adebayoga that he had a hold of his jersey, and that gave him a second booking and also meant he was sent off as well. Hibs themselves had a penalty claim later on in pretty much the last minute of stoppage time. Warren O'Hora looked like he was wrestled to the ground by Dalby himself. They looked at that and decided there wasn't a case to answer. Duncan, we'll get to how the match went first of all, but what did you make of those late decisions?
You just want consistency more than genuinely that is it. I personally don't think either of them are pens, but if you for whatever reason decide to give that the first one, then I'm astounded to see how you cannot give the second one. So yeah, just kind of a remarkable ending to what had been such a pedestrian game. I mean,
Duncan. What I would say just on your commenting on those, I think the Kukarevich one was more of an obvious foul in a vacuum. It's more of an obvious foul. It's a shirt pull and Boyega kind of goes down in the angle you expect. The other one is a bit of messiness. It's kind of hard to tell fully what's going on. But what I will say is that the O'Hara one is at least that's where the ball is going. Whereas the other one, the ball is not going anywhere near there. And it was said at the start of the season that VAR wasn't going to intervene on instances where there was pushing and pulling in a penalty area if it was away from the action. And this one was clearly away from the action. And it's not even a case of, like, I think Marvin Bartley said on Sportscene that maybe it was given because it disrupts the possibility for the ball to go in for a second ball. But even then, it was like, it's not like the header that then happened went back across the face of goal. It just went right to the goalkeeper. It was like, Yeah, it was a nonsense decision.
So obviously I was watching the game that was live on TV at the time. So and then I was like, I'll avoid all the highlights and just go and watch the game in real time, on Scout, which I eventually had to do because and the clock wasn't working properly, so I didn't know when it was. And so when that incident happened, I was like, why is there a delay here? What's going on? And and even replaying from the wide angle 2 or 3 times, I was like, well, I know it was Kukurevich that gave away the foul, but I'm trying to find him and looking for this very obvious thing to have happened. And then eventually you see it, you're like, right, well, okay. And then when you see the second instant, you're like, right, okay. But so it is annoying, but at the same time, Hibs are leaving themselves open to this all the time. This is the new way of doing it. The fact of the matter is that we have lost 11 points from winning positions, and that is only goals from the 86th minute onwards. So if we just shut up shop, at 86 minutes, we're joint third. That is meant like that. Yeah. So we're just a very fragile pedestrian team that can't get a second goal, and we are short of confidence. So so all it takes is a single mistake, and you're fucking up. And also, not only do Hibs know that, our fans know it, but also the opposition and the opposition fans know it as well. And so you can just see it's just this ratcheting up attention as soon as you get into the final 15, 20 minutes, is that Hibs start to sit deeper. They're more frustrated. I would say there wasn't any great difference between the rest of the game, because I've never seen a football treated with so little care as it was in this game. I cannot believe the amount of imprecise passes I've in my life. So some of them were complete in the end, but it was a player on both sides, having to take an extra step. So again, so they're having to take an extra touch. It was a honking match, and what was more alarming is obviously you set aside some of the analysis and stuff, and you're looking at people saying, "Oh, this is probably Hibs' best, most impressive first half performance this season." Christ alive! If that genuinely is if that is what we're now saying, that first half performance is a high watermark, then this is not good.
I think a lot of that was also because you had a lot of the ball, and you had Dundee United camped in, but I think Dundee United were very happy to do that. I don't think that. I mean, you can say that Hibs had them camped in, but you could also say, well, Dundee United just let Hibs have the ball and were perfectly happy to defend their own penalty area. And that was about it in the opening period. Like, Glenn Middleton provided something of a spark in the final third, but other than that, there was nothing really else for United. And I noticed as well, most teams, when they play with a back three, the centre-halves will take the throw-ins. Dundee United don't. It's the wing-backs who take the throw-ins. And I think that is, I mean, it sounds like a nothing, but I think that says a lot about how United approach matches like this, which is like defensive first. That back three does not move. We're not having anybody charging up the park. We're not doing any of that. We're having these guys sit in a three, and their job is to defend and to try and keep the lead. And then you've got Seville in front of them, who again is kind of more just a defender. I do think Babinski is, having not been that impressed with him in the Premiership this season, other than maybe that first game against Dundee, because I think he's starting to. I think the knock on him was that he was wanting too long on the ball, and I hadn't adapted. Having somebody that's played in leagues that are throughout his career, he's quite experienced, but he's played in leagues that are just kind of more slower and technical than the Scottish top flight. But I think you're now starting to see a bit of his quality, and I thought he was quite impressive kind of defensively in this game as well. So he's starting to get to grips with how frenetic Scottish football is. But other than that, there wasn't really a whole lot to write home about Dundee United. But at the same time, there wasn't a whole lot to write about Hibs. And the knock on Hibs so far this season has obviously been the defence. And for the reasons you said, in the last 5 minutes of matches, you're incapable of keeping the ball at the back of the net. And you've got guys who have made ridiculous errors like Ekpateta, Bursic. O'Hara's started to look a bit more shaky as well, having looked like the more competent one at the start of the campaign. Beta had a terrible start to the season. Lewis Miller is obviously...
Lewis Miller.
Yeah, always capable of having a bit of a howler himself. But now I'm starting to look at Hibs and being like, with all these talented kind of players going forward, like Neo, Quad's a decent player, Boyle, Kukurevich, Hoylett looks sharp. Like, you're bringing Eli Yuhan off the bench. The Hibs should be creating more than I think they are at this point in time. Because I think Hibs are missing something in this game when Lewis Miller went off. Because in the first half, he was your most dangerous threat attacker. It wasn't like a coincidence or like weird that he scored the goal. It made sense the way the game was going.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the worry, is that there isn't a plan in the final third, and you saw that the amount of times even stuff would break down from Hibs from throw-ins in the final third. You're like, you should where your set plays, where your patterns of play here. What are we trying to achieve here? It was like just about. I don't and given we are so hamstrung with the Kieran Bowie injury, which means we don't have many options up front. Which again, thank you to our wonderful sporting director for sorting that out. What is the plan to get the best out of our one striker? Because I honestly don't think anyone would have really noticed he was playing in that first half. Like, the way, and you're saying, and that is telling that Miller was the most potent threat, because I'm not entirely convinced we knew what we were doing, and there's no structure, and there's nothing off the bench at the moment apart from Yuan that you would then say, oh, this could change a game. I mean, Nicky Cadden's your last roll of the dice. Come on, this is sad, and you can see the goal. You've got a few minutes to go. Like you at least probably 6 minutes worth of stoppage, and you launch it to no one. The keeper is able to collect it. How have you? Surely there must be a plan. Like, surely this is the sort of thing that you're practicing, that you're being coached by. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just a bit scunnered by it all. And Dundee United did what they needed to do to hang in there. And I think that's going to be kind of the story of their season away from home. But yeah, when things are handed on a platter to them by a soft team, it's just pretty depressing all round.
Right, let's get to our final match, which was a 0-0 draw between St Mirren and Ross County on Saturday. Duncan, you were going to watch this. However, the Y-Scout video for it hadn't been uploaded as of Monday. That's something that's quite rare. Usually all games are uploaded on Monday, especially if they take place on a Saturday. So I think it's fair to say that apologies to crowds of St Mirren and County. We're not going to be able to say too much about this other than what we saw in the highlights of what I read on Pie and Bovril, but we didn't have any other option this week. And to be fair, I don't think either of these will be that bothered.
Yes, speaking to a friend of the podcast, Mark Jordan, and was letting him know about that. Just been like, a bit of an inconvenience because the Y Scout's not done that, and I think the feeling was that Y Scout have maybe done us all a favour by not uploading this game because, as I quote Mark, the worst game of football ever played, which is quite something. So yeah, picking up that point earlier about VAR and stuff like so the penalty that we get in this game, Eli Campbell on Marcus Fraser. I mean, is that not sure enough? And with VAR changing behaviour, that is why you dive in that situation. Yeah. Like in my now you can almost manipulate referees into checking with people about are we sure about that, because the protestation was so great. I mean, I don't think that is. I think there's a foul there. But again, I'm not convinced it's 100% a penalty. If he's still on his feet, I don't think think that's been that's given. Now you can make the argument maybe it should, but I think this is the side aspect from VAR is it's going to start making people being more elaborate in how they go down in the hope that it doesn't look like diving. But I suppose it's this embellishment is going to happen far more often because there's no incentive to stay on your feet. And but then that's not really helped when Greg Kilty steps up and takes an absolute dreadful penalty. And that could have maybe brought the game to life, but instead, no.
I thought, so do you know how Ross Laidlaw's been great at saving penalties throughout his career. I did wonder whether he was a bit lucky in this one. Because initially
absolutely,
I thought,
it's a crap penalty. Like,
but I was going to say, like, because initially I thought, is he off his line? Because it looked like he maybe had gone a bit too early. And I think he did go too early, and I think he had to like almost drag his trailing foot to make sure that it didn't cross the line before the penalty was taken. And then therefore that meant that his foot was still there when Kilty's shot was taken. And had he maybe timed his dive a bit better, he might have dived beyond it. You see goalies kind of making those players that just put it straight down the middle unless you're absolutely hammering it. In fact, I don't even like that either. If you're putting it straight down the middle, you need to put a bit of height on it. Because it's just always the opportunity that the goalie will just leave a trailing leg. And even then, even if the goalie does do a bit more of a kind of forceful dive, you have to get spot on down the middle. Because if you don't, then again, that's like half the goal is covered by the goalkeeper. So,
I don't get it.
I think Laidlaw was a wee bit fortunate with it, but it's two teams, because I saw the fans kind of complaining about this, it's two teams without really much pace in their side. Like, Olasanya's fast. Taylor is fast for a defender. Some men don't really have much more pace about that. They've got guys who are industrious and work hard and get up and down, like O'Hara and Phillips. But Tanser, not fast. James Scott, not fast. Greg Kilty, not fast. They look at the other side. County, is there anybody in that side who's fast? I'm not entirely sure there is.
No one's screaming out, yeah. And I think that obviously it's been mentioned in the podcast for St Mirren fans were clamouring for the return to the 3-4-3, which has arrested the slide, but Saturday's match showed the limitations, which again won't happen too often this season. But you play the 3-4-3 on the basis that you're using that formation to allow Olasanya to catch defences on the turn and get in behind them. Ross County set up on their own 6-yard box, and we're just like, yep. They sat so deep. There was so little between the defence and the goalkeeper that it was, and that the limitations of 3-4-3. St Mirren just didn't have anyone who could move Ross County around to find that space. Ross County were so compact and disciplined and organised, and St Mirren without an X factor at the moment means that it's just really difficult to break down someone that's going to be, that is out their way to be that stodgy and just being like, yeah, we're quite happy just clearing this to the halfway line. Do you want fancy trying to do this again for another 20 minutes? And we'll maybe catch you on the break, but we've got a point. And if you're Don Cowie and Ross County, I mean, that's 5 points in the last 3 games. That's you'll take that. It's a good point for them.
Yeah, I think with County, for what I've seen of teams this season, I think that County are the least impressive team in the league. However, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go down, because unlike St Johnstone, they have got a good defence. I think Lopata and Wright have been 2 excellent signings for them so far this campaign, and they've really improved defensively. And there's not a lot. I mean, they don't even have got any wingers in their squad. So that's also kind of owed to the lack of pace. And they play so it was James Brown was on the right of the back 3, the back 5 or the midfield 5, whatever you want to call it. Josh Reed on the other side. So you're not getting a whole lot there. They're quite an uninspiring side, but
that might be enough this season.
Yeah, it's not a side that beat themselves. What may end up sending them down is that I don't think there's assuming that Hearts and Hibs get their act together and St Johnstone, under new management, sign a capable defender or 2 in January. Now, obviously, County can do things in January as well. But if those happen, if Hearts and Hibs get their act together and just get enough wins and just don't make this a season from hell, and St Johnstone could bolster that defence, I think you're looking at County being obviously the weakest team in the league, but they're just going to continue to pick up points. And that's a lot of ifs. So while I stand by what I say, and that they're the least inspiring team in the league, and I think maybe even County fans would agree with that, there's got to be an air of confidence there that they're still going to be okay. because they, as I said, don't beat themselves.
Yeah, and so I think that we know if you can make it into the last 5, post split and not be caught adrift, that's when a lot of other teams start to really really lose their shit. And and I don't see County getting that low or that becoming that abject. I just don't. The team they've pulled together. I suppose the only thing you could see is around a really bad run of injuries and things like that post transfer window and stuff like that. But still, I think they're probably sitting pretty, at least for a bit. Maybe 10th. How risky.
You take it to stay in the division. Yeah. Right, Duncan, thank you very much for joining me.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you to everybody for listening. If you'd like to hear more from us, the best way to do so is to head over to patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, where there are so many extra podcasts, so much bonus content, hours upon hours upon hours, and the cheapest deal on that is only £2 a month. £5 unlocks everything, and £7 if you want a t-shirt at the end of the season, along with a fanzine, which we've all written some very good articles. Sometimes. No, it's usually quite a good standard for a bunch of guys who don't write for a living, apart from some of us.
Yeah, I was about to say, apart
from like 5 of us or something. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble now. Thank you very much. Goodbye.